Yeah, I'll react to that, sure.
Hey guys, preemptive like, I think. Gravel Institute, good channel. Preemptive like. So, socialism. No. 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 Open mind. How socialists solve the housing crisis. Let's find out. The link to the original video, did I say this? Top of the description. Gravel Institute. Right below that, link to the Discord. Click on it, send you right over there. Makes it easier for me to interact with you, get to know you. To each their own. Let's go, guys.
American housing is in crisis. Right now, up to 12 million Americans are behind an average of $5,800 on rent.
Sorry, when was this made? 2 years ago, so. Okay. All right, I won't be this annoying.
Now, up to 12 million Americans are behind an average of $5,800 on rent and risk eviction. With eviction moratoriums soon to expire, we're facing an unprecedented wave of evictions and foreclosures that will crash straight into millions of struggling families across the country. But the truth is, this crisis didn't begin with the pandemic. In fact, housing has been in crisis for a very long time. Even before the pandemic, in places like New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, median rents for even one-bedroom apartments could approach $2,500 a month or more. About a third of people in Los Angeles spend a majority of their income on housing. In New York City, about 20% of all renters pay most of their income to their landlord. And in my district, Astoria, about a quarter of residents have to spend most of their paycheck on rent. And the crisis isn't just in big cities. In 95% of all US counties, workers making the minimum don't make enough to afford a one-bedroom rental on their own. The Harvard Center for Housing Studies warns of a new normal for housing in the United States, in which nearly half of all renter households spend almost a third of their income on rent. That's why even before the fallout from the coronavirus started to hit, more than 500,000 Americans nationwide were already homeless, millions more on the brink of losing their housing, and countless families struggling every month to make ends meet. At the root of all of this suffering is the fact that in this country, housing is treated as a commodity, not a right. It's a consumer product, just like clothes or cars, that private businesses can sell on the market to make a profit. And if someone isn't able to pay, either because their landlord raised their rent or because they can't work for one reason or another, they're not able to stay in their homes. If they're lucky, they can live with friends or family, or maybe in transitional housing for a bit. But for a lot of people, they have nowhere else to go, and they end up sleeping on the streets. In December 2019, the number of people sleeping in homeless shelters in New York reached 19,000 people, an all-time high. 100,000 New York City students are homeless. That's more than 10% of the entire student population. Why do so many people end up homeless? It's not because there aren't enough homes to go around. There are plenty of empty homes. No, it's because housing people is not the primary goal of developers or landlords. Their goal, simply put, is to make a profit.
I also think that a lot of like conditioning around, you know, homeless shelters and big housing of homeless people, which is a great thing. Most require, or all I think, require complete abstinence from drugs, right? And so a lot of people are really addicted, and that might seem like a good thing for you and me to be like, okay, get a bit more sober, get this free shelter, help me out. But it's easy for someone that's not an addict to say, and that just be like, you know, I don't care how many houses you build, I'm not going to be allowed to carry on my addiction, and I'd rather be with my addiction than rather be. You're forced by your addiction to choose the hard drugs over that. So I think, did I make sense?
And it's much more profitable to build luxury apartments for the rich than decent homes for the poor. This gives us a big shortage of homes for ordinary working people. For every 100 households that are extremely low income, there are only 36 affordable and available homes. As a result, we have plenty of housing for the rich, but poor and working class people don't have nearly enough on the market. So we have people scrounging to make ends meet or sleeping on the streets right below luxury condos and uninhabited apartments. This is a terrible way to organize a housing market. It might be profitable for landlords and developers, but it's not efficient or beneficial for the rest of society. In fact, housing doesn't have to be seen as a market at all. In other countries, housing is considered a fundamental right, like education or healthcare. That means the government goes to significant lengths to guarantee everyone has a home, and the market plays a much smaller role in the construction and distribution of housing. So let's hop across the pond and about 100 years back in time to take a look at just one example of how an alternative housing model got started in beautiful red Vienna. At the end of the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed, leaving behind a number of successor states, including modern-day Austria, home to the former imperial capital of Vienna, the fifth largest city in the world. Despite being the seat of an empire, the chaos of the war and decades of neglect had left the working class of Vienna in desperate circumstances. Inflation was rampant, jobs were scarce, social services were non-existent, and hundreds of thousands of people were crammed into decaying tenements where overcrowding, disease, and violence were rampant. So it's no surprise that in 1919, at the first elections ever held in Austria where all adult citizens could vote, the Social Democratic Party swept into power at the municipal level on the promise of dramatic social and economic reform. And they delivered. The new government of Vienna implemented a huge range of services, including public health care and public child care. They built high-quality hospitals, schools, and recreational facilities. But their crowning achievement was an ambitious program of social housing, what Americans call public housing, that began in 1923 and saw 60,000 new apartments constructed in the first year of its existence, built by the government and financed by taxes on the rich. But these weren't the kinds of apartments you might picture when you think of public housing in the United States. Drab high-rises plagued by chronic neglect and underinvestment. Residents could enjoy leafy courtyards, wide-open spaces, and plenty of natural light. They had shared laundries, state-of-the-art kitchens, food co-ops, bathhouses, pharmacies, lecture halls, schools, and swimming pools. These apartments were designed to be both beautiful to look at and beautiful to live in, fostering a sense of shared community among the people who lived there. And the best part was that because the city didn't have to worry about making a profit, just about paying off their maintenance costs, these homes were both much nicer and much cheaper than what workers had previously known. In 1926, the average rent in Viennese social housing was about just 4% of a monthly wage. The first 15 years after Austrian independence saw its capital transform from a symbol of urban blight into a beacon of socialist governance. It became known as Red Vienna, after the official color of the socialists who had pioneered these changes. And even though Red Vienna fell in 1934 when the country was seized by fascists, who did what they could to roll back social housing, that commitment to good, cheap housing remained after the Second World War. Today, an astonishing 62% of all city residents live in social housing, with the average monthly rent falling somewhere between $400 and $600 a month, with subsidies for lower-income tenants. That is a fraction of what people in America pay. Unlike in the United States, where public housing is treated as
So
a
how little can it be with the subsidies? Like 150 a month?
$600 a month, with subsidies for lower-income tenants. That is a fraction of what people in America pay. Unlike in the United States, where public housing is treated as a worst-case way to house the very poor, Vienna's social housing residents are extremely diverse. Everyone except the top fifth of the population is eligible to live in social housing. This means there's broad appeal across many segments of society, which creates the foundation for its political popularity. That is how the majority of people in Vienna enjoy something that's considered almost utopian here in New York. Affordable housing that isn't just cheap, but desirable. Housing that isn't just four walls and a roof, but a real home with a sense of stability, safety, and community built in. Now, of course, this is only one example of an alternative framework for housing, and Vienna has not fully removed housing from the domain of the market. Residents still pay part of their earnings in rent to cover operational costs, and a sizable chunk of the population lives in private housing. But it's an actually existing alternative that shows us what a step toward a better world could look like. If we want to end the housing crisis, the solution has to be moving toward the full decommodification of housing. In other words, moving away from the status quo, in which most people access housing by purchasing it on the market, and toward a future where we guarantee high-quality housing to all as a human right. So how can we do it? We can start by making sure people who access housing on the private market have ironclad protections against abuse and exploitation. But to go further, toward the Vienna model, we'll have to go beyond the market. We can establish community land trusts to gradually buy up housing on the private market and convert it to community ownership. We can give tenants a right of first refusal to buy out their landlords when buildings go up for sale. And we can fully commit to a new era of social housing, ending subsidies for luxury housing development and using our wealth to build beautiful, high-quality social housing projects that offer good homes and strong communities to everyone.
And people are going to be afraid that their housing prices are going to drop, at least for America. Great example, Steph Curry, who a basketball player, Golden State Warrior, San Francisco, California, where there was going to be, like, California is very progressive there, and they were going to build affordable housing. They were going to buy one of the giant, super wealthy properties in this affluent neighborhood with people like Steph Curry, right? But then they all banded together when they found out it was going to happen for real and said no because their property value. And so many people, leftists, rightists, people on the right, left, of like they're so for like equality and everything until it affects them. And it's like no.
We won't decommodify housing overnight, but we know what we have to do, and we have history to guide us. And we know how we'll get there, through a movement of the multiracial working class organizing for the better world we know is possible. And we've already begun.
Good question.
I'm Zahran Mamdani, Assemblyman for New York's 36th Assembly District in Astoria, Queens, for the Gravel Institute.
Shoot, what was I going to ask?
To guide us, projects that offer good homes and strong communities
Thanks for watching,
to
guys.
everyone. We won't decommodify housing overnight.
So he wants to completely decommodify its housing because he says not overnight. Won't that have like a devastating impact on the housing market? Like, how would that work? It's so unfair to say something that is very touching and just, like giving homeless people, people who don't have housing, or very low income people who can't afford it, but to go to full demodification, how does that work? Anyways, I hope you guys are doing well. Love y'all. If you could answer any of my questions, any comments in general, love to see it. I'll see you guys next time.